Hey guys, it's Woman. I'm here to present to you guys the Week 3 of the 2014 season free-week champion rotation. This week we've got Anivia, Kha'Zix, Malphite, Sivir, Shen, Orianna, Draven, Kha'Zix, Elise, and Nami. As usual, we're going to go through the list from top to bottom, left to right, and tell you guys what role they generally fill, what lane you can expect them to be in, abilities you can expect to see them being used in sequence, and what items you can expect on them. So, first things first, we've got Anivia, who's generally played in the mid. She's usually going to have ability power items such as Rabadon's Death Cap, Zanya's Hourglass, a Rod of Ages, and maybe an Archangel Staff. All of those items are pretty standard on Anivia. That being said, she's got some different abilities to her kit that allow her to just kind of be a powerhouse and be a nuisance at the same time, and pretty much be the focus of almost every team fight, almost guaranteed, after the big, heavy physical damage dealers out, or they want to take out the high magical damage out first, they'll aim for Anivia. So, as I said, she'll be played generally in the mid. She can be played top or bottom as support. Now, if she's being played as support, I have not seen many Anivias played that way, but she can be played that way if so necessary. When she's being played at the top or mid, as I said, expect those items as, the Rabadon Death Cap, the Zanya's Hourglass, etc. Now, her passive allows her to hopefully live through what would otherwise kill her. What happens is, I believe it's every 6 or 7 minutes, when her passive is active, if she has no health left, her health reaches 0, she goes into a crystallized egg, and, well, that's the best way I can explain it, at least, and she will hopefully not die. It will take her about 6 or 7 seconds to what's called revive, but during that time, you cannot attack, you cannot move, you cannot cast spells, and you take increased damage while doing so. So, pretty much you have to die twice, but the second time they go to kill you, it's a lot easier than the first time. Now, her Q, it's a pseudo skill shot, allows you to, it passes through all enemies in a straight line, and you can reactivate the ability at any given time to stun targets where the ice ball currently is. Your W creates a wall of ice that is immovable, and you cannot pass through it unless you use certain abilities such as a flash or a leap. If you try and use something like a dash, then you might not be able to get through. It's very weird on how that works. But the higher the level that ability is, the longer the path is. So if you guys are in the bottom lane, for instance, and you see the tri-bush, you can actually go ahead and block one of the pathways off to skew the enemy, or, kind of corral the enemies into a location that's unfavorable to them. Your E does extensive damage when enemies are affected by either your Q or your ultimate. Now, it does moderate damage when they're not affected by it. It's a, point and click ability. You don't have to do anything else, but it does more damage when they're affected by your Q or your ult. Your ult, it allows you to place a circle down on the floor that will slow enemies that are in it and make them take moderate damage. And again, it affects your E. So, there's no reason why you wouldn't want to get your ultimate. However, if your mana reaches 0, you go too far away from where you placed your ultimate, or you die, your ultimate goes away. You can always, it actually has a very, very short cooldown, so what you can do is place it down, have it kill a couple of ranged minions, and bring it back up, wait the 3 seconds for the cooldown to go through, place it down again for the next wave. It's a very, very, very short cooldown, but it drains mana very, very quickly. Much like the next champion in this, rotation, Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix I've had very, very extensive amounts of playtime with, so I can just rattle off a lot of stuff, but other than, make you all confused, I'll tell you basics. You can expect to see him being played in the mid. He's very high, or rather, as I said with Anivia, both of them are very ability power based, so items you can expect to see on Kha'Zix would be that Rod of Ages, Archangel Staff, Rabadon's Death Cap, Zanya's Hourglass, etc., etc. Now with Kha'Zix, unlike Anivia, an Abyssal Scepter is actually rather good for him. Not saying it's not good for Anivia, but it's better on Kha'Zix because 9 out of 10 times you will be the center of the fight due to how your Defile works. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Your Q, or your passive rather, it allows you whenever you die. Okay, so you die at level 1, you get to stay alive for about 5 seconds and cast abilities free of mana. As long as you have trained in that ability, you can cast it. So say you have your Q level 1, you die at level 1, you can go and spam your Q until you're dead. Until your spirit goes away. Now onto your Q, it has a very, very short cooldown. I think it's one of the quickest cooldowns in the game. It's like 0.5 seconds or 0.6 seconds. It's rather quick. And it's affected by cooldown reduction, so it's good. But like Anivia's ultimate, it can drain mana very, very quickly due to just how much and how quickly you can spam it. Your W, I believe it is. Again, I'm very, very bad with remembering stuff. Your W is your Wall of Pain. It's much like Anivia's crystallized wall, her wall of ice, except people can move through it, but if they do, they get slowed and they have their magic resistance pretty much almost cut in half or gone. It depends on how much magic resist they have. So it's very, very good. Again, it's good for that slow, and just like Anivia's wall as well, the higher level it is, the wider that wall is going to be. So in theory, the bushes around mid, those 2 bushes that you see in the middle, right where the river starts, you can actually place your wall dead center there, and it'll land in the entire bush, and nobody can pass through that bush. So it's good. Next you have Kha'Zix's E, which is Defile. Now, while people are standing in a small radius around you, if you have your Defile activated, they will take sustained damage, pretty much. They will take high amounts of damage as long as they are within a small vicinity of you. But the catch on that is, just like Anivia's ult, very short cooldown, but drains mana rather quickly. In fact, that will be the second most mana draining ability you have, if not the most, because you can just activate it and wherever you go, it's right underneath you. It does not dissipate until either you're dead or you run out of mana. And when you're dead, you can actually activate it and still do damage with it. I believe it actually auto-activates if you have it trained. So it's good. And it scales, again, with ability power. Now, Kha'Zix's ult is one of the true global ultimates in the game, meaning it can hit anybody anywhere on the map at any given time as long as they are not in stealth. So, your ultimate you can cast when you're dead. Like, as soon as you die and you become that spirit, you can start casting it. By the time the cast is done, you'll have hit everybody with it, and you'll have just then, really died. Your spirit will go away, and you'll have to wait your death timer. But you can also, cast it whenever you have the cooldown available. Again, it hits rather decently. Early levels, it doesn't hit, I want to say the first level doesn't hit super hard. It does scale rather good with ability power. So, again, items such as Rabadon's Death Cap, Zanya's Hourglass, and Rod of Ages, especially in Archangel Staff, they're all going to be good for Kha'Zix. It all depends on what order you decide to get them in. Next we have Malphite, who is very potent jungler, as well as top lane or support. I've seen him played all of those 4 roles, or 3 roles rather. If he's being played in the top, or being played as support, you'll see him build pretty tanky, get a, get a Sunfire Cape, get Randuin's Omen, stuff like that to give him health, give him, armor, and he'll try and get maybe an Abyssal Scepter as well to kind of be helpful in team fights to allies. Sorry, throat's a little parched, but anyway, his passive, it turns 10% of his maximum health into a shield. So, let's do easy math. Say you have 1,000 health, you will have a 100 health shield. That shield regenerates every 8 seconds you are not hit in combat. So, say you're being attacked by a champion. Alright, your shield's gone, and now you have to, wait out of combat for 8 seconds. Not a big deal. For 10% of your health, it's not bad. Plus, Malphite gains a lot of health pretty passively. Again, you'll want to get some health items, but not just stack health. That's never a good thing. Your Q, it tosses a shard at an enemy. You get to pick and choose just like, Anivia's E, but it slows them down, does moderate damage, and it puts a small dot on them. Alright, not a big deal. His W, again, I'm gonna have to check a lot of these. His W, it's Brutal Strikes. It allows you to passively cleave every time you attack, and if you activate it, you actually get increased armor and increased damage? Yeah, increased armor and increased attack damage for a short amount of time. Your E allows you to pretty much slow people down in a small radius around you, and it does moderate damage, and the damage it scales on both a percentage of your armor and percentage of your ability power. And your ultimate allows you to pass through anything ever and knock enemies up in a certain location. You get to pick and choose which location, all of that stuff, and 9 out of 10 times if you catch people off guard with it, you can set up a successful gank or a successful kill, or successful retaliation push. So it all depends on the usage. Now, one thing I actually forgot to mention about Kha'Zix, his Q, it does more damage when you're doing, you hit one target with it, but if multiple targets are being hit, you do just a moderate amount of damage to it. And your E, your Defile, every time you score a kill with any ability or, basic attack, you get some mana back, and that mana goes up per level. But that's it. But back to Malphite, items such as a Sunfire Cape and Randuin's Omen are very, very good for him because, a general combo would be, okay, you ult in, you go ahead and pop your W, then your E, so you you hit everybody like a truck, you do more damage after, you go in with your ult, and you then pop your Randuin's Omen and you slow them. And then if there's that one person you really need slowed for a longer amount of time, you go ahead and hit them with your Q. Now that being said, again, Malphite can be played top, middle, or top, jungle, or bottom. If he's being played as bottom, he'll be played as support, not trying to get the last hits, not trying to get the kills, but there to secure the kills. If he's being played in the jungle, you can't really stop him. If he's being played at the top, the way you stop him is you just don't let him farm. That easier said than done to him, pretty much, though. But again, standard items you can see on Malphite: Sunfire Cape, Randuin's Omen, Abyssal Scepter, and maybe even a Warmogs. That does not go amiss on Malphite either. But you have to be careful depending on what the enemies are building. If they're building, a Blade of the Rune King, you don't want to get that high health, otherwise you're just going to kill yourself even quicker. Moving on, though. Next we have Sivir, who very, very potent marksman, or what they call marksman. She'll be played generally in the bottom. If she's played any other lane, I've got no clue. But she's always going to be stacking attack damage and, standard attack damage items such as, Infinity Edge, Phantom Dancer, Static Shiv, a Bloodthirster, maybe a Last Whisper. It all, some of that stuff kind of depends. Like the Static Shiv depends. But, again, you can expect to see that Infinity Edge on her, Bloodthirster, Phantom Dancer, pretty standard items for Sivir. Now, her passive, every time she hits an enemy champion with an attack or one of her abilities, she gets increased movement speed for a short duration. I think it's a second and a half. And, that's not bad. It's useful for chasing or for running away. Her W, which I believe is her spell shield. Again, I'm very, very horrible with remembering abilities. No, her W is actually her ricochet. Now, her ricochet can bounce indefinitely. Meaning, if there are enough enemies, may they be champions, minions, it can bounce indefinitely, but not to the same target twice. So, once it hits, say, Kha'Zix, it can hit Kha'Zix again. But you get 3 charges of your ricochet, so you get 3 attacks that hit everything. Now, mind you, it's a very small portion of your damage, but it's still very good for wave clearing, for harassment, and just being a nuisance. Your E is your spell shield. It lasts about a second and a half. It does not cost mana, but it has a very long cooldown. I mean, almost extremely long. But it is affected by cooldown reduction, so always remember that. And your ultimate, it gives you increased attack speed, it gives you increased movement speed, and gives your allies increased movement speed as well. And if you have Ricochet active, it gives you more attack speed. If not, you just get more movement speed. So you can't complain. And again, it gives your allies more movement speed as well. But again, you can generally see her played in the bottom lane and getting attack damage items. Again, Phantom Dancer, Infinity Edge, and Bloodthirst are pretty standard. And then you can see items such as I'm going maybe on this one, Infinity or Trinity Force. That's actually pretty good for Sivir, but I would not recommend just kind of going straight for it. I would say get, the Infinity Edge or Trinity Force, or the Infinity Edge or Bloodthirster first, and then go from there. Next we have Shen, who is good at being in the top lane or being in the jungle, or even support very rarely. Now, if he's being played at the top or jungle, well, jungle can, kind of forget about seeing him except for ganks. There's, again, almost nothing you can do except counter jungle and try and gank him when he's in his jungle. If he's being played at the top, then you have some ways to harass and kill him. General items you could expect to see on him would be a Warmogs, a Randuin's Omen, maybe get an Abyssal Scepter. That's not terrible on him. I mean, it's not recommended to go any ability power. It's more, try and get some health, try and get maybe some, a little bit of AP, but not too much ability power. But just some, because all of your abilities are affected by it. Your ultimate is affected by your ability power. Your taunt damage is affected by ability power. Your shield is affected by it. And your Q is affected both by your ability power and percentage of your maximum health. That being said, other items that are good for Shen would be a Wit's End as well. So, and a Sunfire Cape doesn't go amiss on him either. All those items are pretty standard on him. But, yeah, again, you can expect to see him be played either in the top or jungle. Or be banned straight up, so you might not even see him. Next, we have Orianna, who's usually played in the mid lane, but can be played as support. Her general items would be, just like Anivia and Kha'Zix, would be Rabadon's Death Cap, Zanya's Hourglass, an Abyssal Scepter is good for her, maybe a Rallis Crystal Scepter, and then kind of go from there. She's pretty high AP as well. You will very rarely see her build attack damage unless she wants to troll. And again, her usual lane is mid. Her Q, it pretty much all of her abilities revolve around her ball, which you can see it. And what happens is her Q sends her ball to a certain location, and it damages any enemies it passes through. Her W, it allows her to expand her ball and deal damage in AoE around it. Her E is a shield that she can place onto anybody with the ball, and while people have the ball on them, or she has the ball next to her and she doesn't have it out somewhere, they get increased armor and magic resist while it's still on them. And her ultimate gives a bigger AoE around the ball, and it actually pulls enemies into the ball and reverses the way they're facing, in a way. So it's good for setting up those good ultimates for your ADC, for instance, if their ultimates like that, like say Misfortune, or you need to get enemies in a certain location for, Malphite ultimate, etc. And it's also good for, going ahead and killing those people off last second. That being said, her W also slows enemies down that are in that area of where the dissonance happened, and if allies pass through it while it's active, they get increased movement speed for a short duration while they're in it. So again, everything revolves around that ball of hers. And her passive, every time she attacks the same target, she deals increased damage, which also scales with her ability power. Next, we have Draven, who, just like Sivir, expect to see high attack damage items on and be played in bottom lane. So, Phantom Dancer, Bloodthirster, Infinity Edge, all of those are very, very good for Draven. In fact, I would say more so good for Draven than Sivir, but unlike Sivir, you do not get any ability power whatsoever. Items that are also good on Draven would be that Static Shiv that I talked about previously, maybe a Black Cleaver, a Last Whisper is always good, so all of those items are very good for Draven. It depends on your situation though. Your Q, it makes you toss an axe into the air, or makes you toss an axe at an enemy, and you'll see a little circle near or on you where that axe is going to land. Every time you catch that axe, you score a kill on a minion, you get a stack of your passive. Now every time you kill a champion, you lose all the stacks of your passive, or if you die, you lose, I believe it's half the stacks of your passive. And what happens is, every time you get a kill with your passive, your passive gives you 2 gold per stack of your passive. So let's say you had 100 stacks, that's an extra 200 gold from your passive. So you want to be catching those axes as often as possible and getting as many last hits on minions as possible. The best scenario would be kill a minion with an axe and catch the axe, so that's 2 stacks of your passive right there. It was previously 3 stacks but gave you half, but now it's 2 stacks and gives you all of it. And you can never get less than 50 extra gold from your passive, so even if you only had 1 stack, you'll still get 50. So it's good. Your W, I believe it's called Bloodlust? Or Blood Rush, rather? We'll check that now. Blood Rush, yeah. Your W's Blood Rush, it allows you to get increased attack speed and movement speed for a super short duration. I mean about 3 seconds, but if you catch an axe, it allows the cooldown to be reset on that ability. And also, if you have, if you're catching that same axe for a good couple of seconds, you can actually activate your Q a second time and have 2 axes going, but I do not recommend doing that until you are very, very comfortable playing Draven. It's very hard to catch both axes at the same time, so be careful with that. But if you are chasing an enemy down and you're blood rushing every time you can, you're catching that axe, blood rush, etc., you can get very, very close to them in a very short amount of time and do a high amount of damage to them. Your E makes, to frontal attack that, I mean, you can aim it. It's a skill shot pretty much, but what happens is it knocks enemies to the side of the axes and does damage to them and slows them. So it's good for harassment, good for, knocking people out of brush, good for stopping ults from being cancelled or from channeling, stuff like that. Can be used to cancel somebody like, say, Kha'Zix's ult, for instance. So be wary of that. And your ultimate, it's a skill shot, but also kind of not a skill shot. What happens is you can throw your ult down any direction, and it will go in a straight line from there on out. And the second it hits an enemy champion, or I believe it hits a wall, it starts, or you just reactivate the ability on its own, you can, the axe is returned to you and deal damage to everything it passes through again. And when the axes return, say they hit a champion in the mid lane, if it hits the same champion, it'll do full damage to them again. But it does deal less damage the more enemies it passes through. So just be wary of that. So the first target it hits on the way out and on the way back, it does the maximum damage to. And that's Draven in a nutshell. Very high attack damage, very low survivability. Next we have Kha'Zix, who can be played top lane, mid lane, or jungle. Again, just like any other champion being played in the jungle, very hard to counteract them. But if he's being played in the top lane or mid lane, it's very easy to counteract him. Just don't... The key to Kha'Zix is catching people solo. So if he never catches you, without creeps or something near you, you're fine. Because his Q, it allows him to deal more damage to an enemy that's by themselves with no, allies near them. And it does an increased amount of damage by a percentage of your health. His W is it's a skill shot or a conal shot, depending on how he levels his ultimate, and I'll get into that in a minute. But early levels until about level 6, it's a skill shot, and does pretty high amount of damage to the first enemy it hits. It's actually very small AoE, so if it hits 3 minions clumped up together, it does damage to all of them, and if he's close enough to them, he gets healed for a certain amount based on how many enemies were hit. His E is a leap, and you can use it to leap in and out of combat and over walls, stuff like that. However, he's not able to really do that until he upgrades his leap with his ultimate. Again, talk about that in a minute. But all of his abilities, his Q, his W, his E, and his ult have, their standard levels, and then he what's called evolves, one of his 4 abilities. The way he does that is with his ultimate. So he can evolve 3 abilities per game. He can evolve his Q to make it do even more damage and increase the range of it, his W to make it a conal attack, his E to actually make it to where every time you score a kill or an assist on an enemy champion, you have the cooldown reset on it, and if you do it on your ultimate, it makes the stealth last longer and you take less damage while stealthed. But that's really it. You'll see items on Kha'Zix such as a Manamune, a Black Cleaver maybe a Last Whisper instead. A Bloodthirster is always good, Infinity Edge. You might also see Iceborne Gauntlets. Those aren't bad for him if he wants people to just stay put. I would not I wouldn't say get them just straight off the bat, but if you have the luxury of being able to do so, get them. But his Q, the damage on it, as well as the damage on his W, very heavily favored for attack damage items. The heal component of his W, it favors ability power. The damage from his leap favors ability power, but not enough to make it viable to just build straight ability power. You want attack damage and a lot of it. But that's really it. You can be played top lane, mid lane, or jungle. Elise. I don't know all that much about her. I know she has pretty much 2 different skill sets. I'm going to have to look at the page for her. So her passive, which is Spider Swarm. In human form, when Elise spells, or one of Elise's spells hit an enemy, she readies a Spiderling. And when she's in Spider form, she summons her Spiderlings to attack nearby enemies. When she's in human form, her Q is Neurotoxin. Deals damage based upon how high the target's health is, and when she's in Spider form, she lunges at an enemy and deals damage based upon how low their health is. When she's in Spider form, her W, when she's in human form, her W releases a Venom Gorge Spiderling that explodes when it's near a target or after certain duration. When she's in Spider form, Elise and her Spiderlings gain attack speed and heal Elise on each attack. When she's in human form, her E allows her to stun enemy targets and hit them and reveals them if they are not stealthed. In Spider form, Elise and her Spiderlings ascend into the air and then descend upon an enemy target. And her ultimate, Spider form, transforms into a menacing spider with new abilities. While in Spider form, Elise deals bonus magic damage and on attack and has increased movement speed. Now I believe you might be able to get your ult to level 1. No, it doesn't. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. I think you can, however. I think. Don't quote me on it. Doesn't say. But, yeah, so she's pretty much built for ability power. We can actually see some of her recommended items. Landry's Torment, Rabadon's Death Cap, Abyssal Scepter, Void Staff, etc. All of those are pretty good on Elise. I would not, say don't get any of them. So, if you can, get some of these. Also, onto that Landry's Torment, that's also good for somebody like, say, Kha'Zix, where you're going to be hitting everybody with everything, so you want that. It's also decent on Anivia, but I would not recommend it. And don't recommend it on Oriana. Definitely on Kha'Zix, though. And Elise, as I said, you can see her being played either in the top or in the jungle, so take your poison. Last we have Nami, who generally played support, so the actual true only support in this whole lineup. You can see items on her such as Ruby Sightstone, the Ruby Sightstone, Aurelia's Reverie, Runic Bulwark, all of those general support items you can expect to see on her, which will generally be in the bottom lane with the, attack damage champion, such as Draven or Sivir. Other items you can expect to see on Nami would be maybe an Athene's Unholy Grail. That's pretty good for Nami as well. Her, again, not too much knowledge on her, so let's just check her abilities. Her passive, Surging Tides. When Nami's abilities hit allied champions, they gain movement speed for a short duration, so that's good. Her Q, which is Aqua Prison. It's a small reticule, and you can aim it onto enemy champions or enemy minions, and if anything gets hit by it, they get knocked up into the air, and they take damage. So, that's good. But people do have time to actually move out of it. Your W, which is Ebb and Flow, unleashes a stream of water that bounces back and forth between allies and enemies, healing allies and dealing damage to enemies. Now, what'll happen is it'll bounce, if you send it to an ally, it'll hit an enemy then, and then bounce back to an ally if possible, and vice versa. If you send it to an enemy first, bounce to an ally, bounce back to an enemy, bounce back to an ally. So you pick and choose. It can't just bounce between allies or enemies, what I'm saying. Next, you have your E, which is Tidecaller's Blessing. Empowers an allied champion for a short duration. Their basic attacks deal bonus magic damage and slow the targets. And your ultimate, it sends a giant tidal wave in a line, knocks up enemies, slows them, and damages them if they get hit. Mind you, it moves rather slow, so it's very easy to avoid. I say very easy, but in the midst of combat, it's rather difficult. But if that's the first thing you see is Nami's ult, you have plenty of time to move out. So that's it, guys. Sorry I botched up some things, but yeah, it's the general thing of all these champions. So, it's easier to understand when you're playing them. That's why I kind of recommended bot games in the past, but, a lot of you may not even do that, so why bother wasting my breath? But definitely I would say, worst comes to worst, do some practice games with Elise, and I would say with Orianna the most, because they require, in my opinion, the most skill to play. Draven does as well, but not on level of Orianna. Definitely not, in my opinion. Just because of how Orianna's abilities work. All the abilities with her ball make it a nightmare to remember to start off with. But, yeah guys, that's it. My name has been Shadowswolm. Do not expect any videos out the rest of the week. I'm pretty much going to be busy until, Saturday. Then I've got a 3-day weekend and then working again. But, my name has been Shadowswolm. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe down below. If you want to see more League of Legends content, if you want to see more Dota 2 content that I just recently put up, don't forget to do any of those things. Follow me on Twitter. You can see exactly when I upload videos. My Twitter sends out messages all the time. Hey, upload a new video. Go check it out. And gives you a link right to the video. So, follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Facebook if you want. Follow the channel. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content. Again, if I missed anything or if you have a suggestion on other items you can build on the champions, leave them in the comment section down below. Other than that, I'll talk to you all next time.